Alright, welcome. Today we're going to be looking at using the Pythagorean Theorem and how that relates to our understanding of exponents and square roots. Before we get into the actual meaning of the Pythagorean Theorem, there's a couple vocab words that we need to understand. So the first one is a leg, which is defined as the two sides of a right triangle that form the 90-degree angle. Okay, so that's two of them. So if this is my triangle, these would both be legs. And then the other one is the hypotenuse, which is the longest side of a right triangle. And it is always opposite the 90-degree angle, or the right angle. So here, our hypotenuse would be this side here, and there's our 90-degree angle. So, in the Pythagorean Theorem, we are saying that in any right triangle, the sum of the squares of the length of the two legs is equal to the square of the length of the hypotenuse. Or, in other words, you will see a squared plus b squared equals c squared, where a and b are the two legs, and c is always the hypotenuse of the triangle. Here we have an example where our legs are 8 and 6, so 6 squared plus 8 squared is the same as 36 plus 64, which is the same as 100. And our hypotenuse was 10, which is also 10 to the second power, or 100. So here we're actually looking at the examples more in picture form. If you notice, again, we have 6 and 8 as our legs, and then we have 10 as our hypotenuse. So on the bottom here, 6 squared plus 8 squared is the same as 10 squared, and then 6 squared is the same as 36, so we'd have 36 plus 64 is 100, so it would check out. And then it's just looking at the formula. Once again, this would be our 90-degree angle, a and b would be our legs, and c would be our hypotenuse, so a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Now we can use the Pythagorean theorem then to find missing lengths of the sides of right triangles. Here we know the two legs, and we're trying to figure out what the length of the hypotenuse is. So we're going to look at 4 to the second power plus 5 to the second power, and we want to know what that equals to the second power. Well, 4 to the second power is 16, 5 to the second power is 25. So when we go ahead and add those up, we take 16 plus 25. And we get 41 is equal to the square of c. Now this is where our understanding of exponents and square roots come in. So here, because 41 is equal to c squared, we have to undo that square, or we're going to take the square root. So when I do that, and I go ahead and take the square root of that number, I get 6.403, and it keeps going on from there. But because we're rounding to the nearest hundredth, I'm going to look at that 0, I look one digit over, that 3 tells me that I stay the same. So our answer would be 6.40 is equal to c. Now I know typically the 0 is not important, but because we're rounding to the nearest hundredth, we actually want to leave that 0 there to show that we're using that place value. So now on this one, why don't you go ahead and pause the video, try this one out on your own. So now we have 5 squared plus 7 squared is equal to c squared. 5 squared is 25, 7 squared is 49. Okay, so now we're going to take 25 plus 49, and we get 74. Once again, we're going to find that square root to the nearest hundredth, which is 8.602. but it goes on. Once again, I look over, we stay the same, so our answer would be 8.60 to the nearest hundredth. Now let's take a look at an example of a situation you might encounter in real life where you might use the Pythagorean Theorem. If two airplanes leave the same airport at the same time, and the first flies south for 350 miles while the other plane flies 725 miles west, how far apart are the two planes? So one might think that you're adding, but because they're flying in different directions, so here we have 350 miles, and here we have 725, and the distance is going to be that hypotenuse again. So we can use the Pythagorean theorem by squaring both of our legs. So 725 squared is 525,625, and 350 is going to be 122,500, and then we're going to add those two together for a total of 648,125. And because we're looking for that hypotenuse, we're just going to go ahead and take the square root of that. So we get 805.062, and once again that number goes on. So if we rounded to the nearest tenth even, it would be 805.1 miles apart. Alright, so now it's your turn. Why don't you go ahead and pause the video, try this one out on your own and see how you do. So on this one, once again, we have that it's flying 11 miles south, and the other bird is flying 7 miles west, and we want to know how far apart they are. So we have 7 squared plus 11 squared. It's going to equal our distance squared, or c squared. So we have 49 plus 121 is equal to c squared. I'm going to go ahead and add those up. So 49 plus 121 gives us 170. I'm going to go ahead and take that square root, and we're going to get 13.038, and it keeps going on. If we round to the nearest hundredth, it's going to be 13.04 miles. So sometimes you have situations where you might know the hypotenuse in a leg, but you're missing one of the other legs, and that would be in a case of what we're looking at here. So here we have 26, which is the hypotenuse because it's the one opposite the right angle, is equal to our one leg squared, which is 10 squared, plus our b squared. Now 26 squared is going to give us 676, and that's going to equal 100 because that's 10 to the second power, plus our b to the second power. Now if we're working backwards, I'm going to go ahead and subtract 100 because I'm trying to find out what's left over for just b, in which case we have 576 is equal to b to the second power. And now I can just go ahead and take the square root of that, and I get 24 is equal to b. Alright, so now it's your turn. Go ahead and pause the video and try this one out. So here we have 25 squared is equal to a squared plus 7 squared. 25 squared gives us 625 plus 49. So once again, I'm working backwards. I'm going to go ahead and subtract 49 from that. And I get 576 is equal to a to the second power. I'm going to go ahead and do the square root of that. And once again, I get 24 is equal to a. Alright, so here's another one for you to try out. Pause the video and then check your work when you're done. Here we have 12 squared, because we have the hypotenuse, is equal to 4 squared plus b squared. So we have 144 is equal to 16 to the second power plus b to the second power. Oops, not 16 to the second power, just 16. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract 16 to figure out what just b is by itself. So 144 minus 16 gives me 128, equal to b to the second power. If I take the square root of that, I get about 11.3 is equal to b to the nearest tenth. Alright, one more for you to try out. Go ahead and pause the video, do this one, and remember you're rounding to the nearest tenth. So we have 16 to the second power is equal to 12 to the second power plus a to the second power. So we have 256 is equal to 144 plus a to the second power. Now I'm going to go ahead and subtract 144 from both sides to take that away. And I get 112 is equal to a to the second power. I'm going to take the square root of that. And here we have 10.58. Keeps going on, but if we're rounding to the nearest tenth, that 8 tells us to round up. So to the nearest tenth, we'd have 10.6.